Welcome to the Twinkle Talks EYFS podcast. Working in the early years is busy, funny, messy, and exhausting. Join me, Shána, some of the Twinkle EYFS team, special guest speakers, and other early years practitioners as we talk honestly about our experiences. Whether you're listening for CPD, on your commute, or to help you relax, Twinkle EYFS will share everything you need to know about all things early years. Hello, lovely listeners, and welcome to another episode of the Twinkle Talks EYFS podcast with me, Shána. We have got a really special episode today because it's been a little while since we've heard from our wonderful friends over on Twinkle CPD, Julia and Louise. They have come to speak to me today about something that I'd never heard of before. Perhaps you, the listener, have done. Anyway, we are going to get right into it with our episode all about the play cycle. Let's take a listen. Hi, Julia and Louise. It feels like it's been so long. How are you?
Yeah, good. It's lovely to be back.
Yeah, it's been ages.
I know. The listeners are like missing you. Like, of course, they love our other episodes, but just, you know, the Lulia content. I haven't forgotten that nickname, by the way.
Let's bring that back.
We need to bring it back. So we're here today, very excited to talk about something I've never heard of before. So I'm really excited to talk about this. The play cycle. I mean,
sorry,
yeah.
I'm going to ask something there.
Curb your enthusiasm, ladies. Christ.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were finished talking. So I was like,
I know, me too. I went,
the noises of me listening.
So I don't know if this is me. Maybe is it like a new thing, or is this theory that's been around for a while and is part of play talk?
Well, the actual model was first developed in 1998, so a while ago, and then it's been looked at again in 2020. So, I feel like people may have heard about it again when it got looked at the second time, and they may have heard about it when it first came out. But it also, I don't think it's talked about all the time. It's not very frequent. I didn't really know about it much. I don't know about you, Lou. When I was training, they didn't mention it. When did you first hear about it?
I don't think it's something that probably has been covered very much, but I think as we talk through the play cycle, a lot of the practice in how you respond to play and how children go through various stages of the play cycle, I think it will resonate with people as something that they've seen. So even though you might not have heard of the play cycle, I think some of the process of the play cycle you'll have seen in practice.
That's good to know, and that's quite true for a lot of things in early years, isn't it? It's like we'll often say these things and get you lovely clever ladies on, and we'll be like, oh my god, what's that? But then when we start to talk about it, it's like, oh, this is what I do anyway.
Exactly.
So this is cool.
It's like new language, or some slightly different ideas to think about. So it's like a nice way of like framing it differently, but it's often things you will have heard about or do already.
Okay, it's like a little education buzzword.
Yeah, exactly. A new way to think about it and discuss.
Okay. It's like the triple I's. Now we got play.
Exactly.
It's fine. Great. Okay, so what is the play cycle then, my ladies? What is it?
So it is a model that kind of identifies 6 main stages that occur as children play. And so that includes, we'll go through all of these, so don't worry if you don't know these words, like pre-cue, play cue, the play return, flow, play frame, and play annihilation, which sounds so dramatic.
Oh, that's my favourite part. I was saying to you guys before we started recording, I was like, I'm putting this in the episode. When I hear the term play annihilation, I just get this image of Stitch from Lilo and Stitch and that part in the film when he builds the model San Francisco or wherever it is in Lilo's bedroom, and he spends all of this intricate time building this lovely model city, and then he goes rah, 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 and then just annihilates it, just destroys it. That is in my mind what that term means. So I'm very excited to talk about that. So yeah, those 6 main.
So probably Stitch has gone through quite a lot of the play
Yeah.
cycle
Yeah.
and then chooses when to
It
end
will
the
it could
play.
be near the end, yeah. So it actually could tie
Stop
together
it.
very nicely. Because when
We're
you were talking
looking
about it, I was like, it could be the end of that play cycle that he was playing with it, and now he's like, "I'm done with this destruction."
Interesting. Well, I need to go for research. I need to watch that scene again, you see,
I think
because
we all
yeah,
need
he
to watch
we
it for
yeah,
research.
if anyone are using, and I've been told this, listeners
Mm.
are using our podcast episodes for CPD, can I just say?
Ooh,
So listeners
fantastic.
who are doing that, oh my god, thanks guys. Um, your homework for your CPD session is to go and watch Lilo and Stitch and identify the different phases of Stitch's play cycle.
Yeah, how fun is
Perfect.
that? I love
Perfect
when homework
CPD
turns
to
up to
me.
watching Lilo and Stitch.
Look, we're just bringing everything together, you know what I'm saying?
Just putting smiles
Um,
on faces.
so yeah, talk me through them then in a bit more detail. Actually, let's start from why is there a play cycle? Like, what is this theory? Why do we need it? What do people use it for?
Well, it was actually first developed, just to just say, since we're talking about this, it's important to name the theorists behind them. So by Gordon Sturrock and Perry Ellis. So that was when it was first developed in 1998, and
Hmm.
then further again in 2019 by Pete King and Shelley Newstead. And if people are really interested in it, there is a book on it, The Play Cycle, talking about the theory and the research and the application. So we can only talk about so much in this episode, but it's really nice if you want to go have a kind of deeper dive into it all. And it's just a really great model to help you understand play better, to understand kind of what phase a child might be in, and also, of course, like your role in play. Because I think what we talk about a lot with play and what we've talked about in previous episodes with powerful play is our role in play, and not to kind of try and halt or interrupt too much children's flow in play. So this is really nice to think about what stages children are in, what behavior they're displaying, what they're learning, and the best ways of interacting and supporting that play through the cycle. So it's really interesting to better understand your role and position. And I think that goes for educators and caregivers as well.
Yeah, and I think it also brings an interesting angle to play. Like you say, we've spoken about play a lot. I've got that podcast episode, You Just Play All Day. You know, for people who aren't familiar with early years,
Mm,
play means something entirely different. But with this
mm.
model of the play cycle, it's actually no, there's theory behind play, and these are the stages
Yeah.
they go through, and this is how they access learning, and this is what stage they're at. So I'm
Mm,
intrigued. So the
mhm.
first stage, what's that one?
So that's called the pre-cue. Now, this is sort of the impulsive part of wanting to play. And quite often it can be an unconscious sort of feeling or act. So this is the beginning part of the process of play. It starts from the child and their desire and need to play. So it can start with an idea, an imaginative thought, or maybe even a feeling that they have that they want to play or they want to explore something. So the words that can be associated with this can sometimes be referred to as metalude, and meta means before, and lude means play, so before play. So it's the bit before the child even starts to play. It's the sort of the thought and the pulse, impulsive action or impulsive feeling to want to interact with something.
Is it like the spark or the inspiration? And they go, oh,
Yeah, yeah,
right.
exactly. Yes. So then from that, the child then goes into what we call the play cue. And this is where, at this point, the child invites something or a person or something in their environment into their world. So they start to share their idea or their thought or their feeling of what they want to explore. So this can sometimes be obvious, but sometimes it can be extremely subtle. It could be just through eye contact, it could be through a gesture or an action, and it's a way for the child to sort of say, come and play, come and join me. So, but for this part in the play cycle, for it to continue at this point, it needs to be accepted by somebody else.
Mm,
So if it isn't, then the play sort of stops. So it is important that it is a very important stage in it. So examples of the play cue could be, I've said, making eye contact. It could be a child smiling at another child. It could be them waving and asking them, waving to get their attention, or even just asking, want to play.
I love that. Isn't that little bit when you like the kids go to nursery for the first time and they pluck up the courage to go, "Do you wanna play with me?" Oh,
Yeah.
my heart bursts.
So cute. Like, the first time they do that, they're so brave.
I know, I'm like, "Did someone get an observation on that? They actually asked someone to play with them." Oh.
Oh, so cute.
So that's a play cue. So, but it could be if a child doesn't vocalize, it could be them picking something up and like a ball and waving it around to
Mm.
grab somebody else's attention. So yeah, so that's a really fundamental part of the play cycle, because if that play cue isn't picked up, play can end quite quickly.
Yeah. I've got 2 questions so far. Is that okay?
Of course.
They're not hard-hitting questions, I promise, and if they are, you can just tell me to shut up. So my first question is, what about the children who maybe struggle with eye contact, struggle with social communication, children like that? They have different play cues, and if so, like, how do we recognize them?
Well, that's a very, very good question. And I would say there's no one way any child, children will be in the moment. So they will more than likely use different play cues at different times. So they won't always say want to play, like they won't always use eye contact. And again, like you've just said, for some children, eye contact is very difficult. So it's unlikely they would choose that way of trying to communicate their play to somebody else. But I think that's where the skill of the educator comes in, because an educator will know all the different children quite well in their setting, or very well in their setting, and they'll be able to carefully observe the play cues or the behaviours that are being displayed by different children. And they'll be able to, maybe through their observation, make sure that those play cues don't go unnoticed, so that the
Mm.
play can continue. So I think, I don't think there's one way that one child would always communicate their play through. I think it would be a range. If their play cue maybe isn't picked up by just smiling, they might pick up an object and do something else as well. I suppose it depends on how much they want to explore that play.
So that was going to move. That's lovely. Thank you. It's going to move on to my next question, you see, because you said about in the play cue stage when they're seeking out and they're trying to make contact with other people to engage in their play. Look, a lot of the time it is early years. If a child in early years doesn't want it, they ain't going to do it. So they might say, "Oh, do you want to come and play?" And they'll go, "No." A lot of the time you say the play stops, but I've noticed some children, and I don't know if it's a confidence thing or if it's a characteristic of effective learning thing, but they will carry on with their play, but they'll do it by themselves, or they'll have the confidence to go and ask another person. Does that fit into the cycle anywhere?
Does go into the play cycle, but I would say you're probably right in that it depends how some of the characteristics of how children respond to things, their behavior. And I guess it's very, if a child is emotionally not, and it's a huge thing to ask another child to play, and then they get sort of turned down, I suppose, from that opportunity, or it goes unmissed, then there's two things, isn't there? They'll either go off and maybe explore it for themselves, or they'll walk away from it and they'll go and join something else, or they'll try something different. So I think it probably is linked to how they're feeling and their emotions, and lots of the different characteristics of effective learning, and thinking about resilience, and how many experiences they've already had of having a really
Rejection.
exciting yes, having it turned down, but also having those moments of having it accepted and knowing it's okay that not everybody wants to join in with that moment that you're wanting to explore.
I think that's a really big thing as well, because I was always a big advocate when I was in my nursery and reception classes, like, it's okay to say no, like, for the children, like, just because someone's asked you, "Do you want to come and play?" Of course, we wanna make friends, we wanna be social, but if it's genuinely something that you really don't wanna do, you shouldn't force the child to do it, and it's such a teaching point for both sides, because I wanted to be able to teach the children that you're allowed to have your own preferences and you're allowed to say no, but also the children, look, life is life. We're gonna face rejection at some point in our lives. So it's a good teaching point to teach children how to deal with that kind of rejection at a young age and be like, oh, it's okay. They just don't like that. Maybe you can go find someone else that will play. Or maybe you could do it by yourself. Like, and having that as a teaching moment of actually not everyone is going to want to play with you all the time. So you're going to have to learn to deal with that in a healthy way and move forward.
And I think children are a lot more honest at that age as
Yeah.
well, because I found them to be quite blunt. Because obviously adults have learned to like almost cushion the rejection blow, and lots of children are just like, no, don't want to do that.
Yeah.
The child's like, "Oh," and some of them really brush it off and they're like, okay, and just walk away and like ask someone else, and some of them are like crushed. So it's like
Yeah.
a real
That would be me.
spectrum, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think alongside that, it doesn't always have to be accepted by a child, that it can be accepted, or the cues can be picked up by an educator who can then support the play to start. And then maybe they might step away from that. And we'll come on to maybe more of the adult role a little bit later, but it can be acknowledged not only by a child, it can be acknowledged by somebody else. But it also might be, like you said, just them exploring play, like Stitch, you were saying, built this whole thing. They were actually, their play cue was about them in the environment. It wasn't necessarily about anybody else in their play.
No, he had a great
So
time by himself in those cardboard boxes.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Yeah.
no, thank you for answering those questions. Sorry for the little interruption. I was just intrigued. So that was stage 1, pre-cue. Stage 2 is the play cue. What is stage 3?
Stage 3 is the play return. So this is the response that they receive from themselves or another child or the environment to the play cue. So it activates the play. So examples of this could be the play cue was another child the child waving them over, and then the return is the child nodding and laughing and joining in, or two children maintaining eye contact with each other, and then one turns to run away and the other child follows. So there's various different ways. It could be through eye contact, like we've said previously. It could be the child with the play cue rolls a ball to another child, and the return is when the child rolls the ball back. So then play is activated, play begins.
Interesting. Weird question. Look, you guys look so scared when I say I'm going to ask a question. I promise, like, it's good, it's fine. I'm just
Like,
really
what's
interested
coming?
in this subject. Is the play cycle specifically for peer interaction play, or can you apply the play cycle theory to like parallel play? Because I'm thinking at this point, when you're talking about play return, it's a lot of come join my play, cool, I'll play with you. But is there an element of come join my play, good, I'll play beside you? Because I initiate this with my partner. Look, I'm just gonna get cats out the bag here. Okay, this is what I do, and I feel like, as adults we do also play. Like, we don't have to play the same thing each time, like play games together, but we're initiating some sort of play because we're playing parallel.
Yeah, I do think I do think there is an element of that, because you might choose to come and sort of sit or be beside the child, or the other
Right.
child might move closer and play alongside, and they might be interacting in some way, but they might be playing
Yeah.
slightly differently with
Yeah.
maybe the same things, but there's some form of interaction, whether it's
Yeah.
looking and responding, or whether it is actually connecting. You say they're building or something, it could be that they end up joining it together, but there's some form of acceptance.
There's there's an element of something, isn't there? Because it's like, I know a lot of children, might struggle with, they're very, "It's mine. This is mine. I'm playing. This is mine." And obviously they're struggling with that interaction, that play cycle. But then it's a big step when they suddenly accept and go, you know what, yeah, it's cool. Like, you can play alongside me. I just wondered, sorry if it threw a spanner in the works.
I think there is an element, definitely an element, and I think it depends on what they're interacting with, as well.
Mm.
Um, because if we're talking about a tag and chase game type thing, then no, I wouldn't have said the play return if they just went and stood beside them. I don't think it would be acknowledged in the right way. But if we're talking about, say, for example, playing at a sand or water tray or something, that sort of play can be developed in slightly a different way, can't it? In how the back and forth exchanges are play out, I suppose.
Yeah, I was thinking of when you're on the carpet or you've got, a big small world or small blocks that you're playing with, and you can see how they notice each other as someone else comes. I feel like the complete opposite might be the child stands up and walks away when someone else comes in that space, which does happen because sometimes they're like, no, I don't even
Mm.
want anyone in this space. And yeah, sometimes the stage before they're ready to play with others is, like you said, parallel play, and it's more they're observing what the other one is doing, and it is sometimes adapting their own play, and there's still kind of there's interactions, but it's less obvious.
And I think as we go on to flow, which I think in a minute Julia is going to talk about, I think that will be almost piece that together, because the flow sort of stage can develop over time. So they might say what Julia's just said about children interacting with a small world or something on the carpet together, and then one child has enjoyed that playful moment with another child, but then they stand up and they walk away, but they might then come back to it a bit later on and continue the play. So the flow part is quite a flexible stage, really, which I'll let Julia continue.
Yeah, it might have people use the word flow quite a lot because I think it's been quite topical in the last 5 years, as especially related to adults and our focus. And we've obviously noticed that with children, that's a big skill that we work towards in terms of like helping children to focus in their attention. That comes with kind of communication and language and understanding as well. But flow is really that stage that they get into their play, and it can last seconds, minutes, you know, much longer, and days and weeks, because they might come back to it in and out. So I think that's what we were saying, it's quite flexible, and sometimes you think that it has to be all at one time, but that's not necessarily the case. And especially if it's one of those great activities where you've, for example, rolled the mat over something and children have gone home, and then they can come back to it, and then they can come back to that play in that state of flow again. And what's nice is that they're really absorbed in that time. Like, that's the flow. They lose all concept of time around them and what's going on. And that's what you also would notice if you're an adult and there's something that you love doing, whether it's cooking or painting, and you don't know that hours have gone past. That is the state of flow. And so they might not notice distractions around them as well, and they might not hear your instructions if you're trying to get everyone's attention. So you've probably seen children in flow, and that might look like children running around or shouting together or playing a game, or they're really invested in their role play and they're just completely insular in that time, or
Mm.
building dens or kind of gathering materials or from like junk mark, kind of remaking junk modeling or mark making, all sorts of things. So they're really just immersed in that time, and I think you have to be really, really careful about our role when they're doing that, because we don't want to interrupt the flow. And I think that's the stage that it can happen the most, because I think we get excited that they're so excited and immersed in their play, and maybe we want to get involved or we want to ask a question, but we just have to be really, really careful not to interrupt it so that it doesn't stop the play, and we can take on more of an observation of those two words we're like merging, and really notice what they're doing and what they're interested in and their needs and things like that.
No, I agree with you. I think the biggest barrier I found when I was a teacher was that maybe we had observers come in or senior leaders come in, because I worked in early years in a school that maybe didn't necessarily know the importance of play and learning, and being like, oh, why aren't you getting involved? Why aren't you asking them
Yeah,
questions? And I'm like, hang on. I don't need to. They're actually doing a lot of learning here at the minute, and I need to observe where it's going first. Please trust me, I know what
yeah.
I'm doing. And that was really hard, yeah, to explain to people who don't know that much about early
Mhm.
years or about the power of play and the play cycle, that they're in the flow right now, and if I interrupt this, all of the learning is going to go. It's just going to stop. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, the poor kids are just like they're in this world, and then it's literally like someone comes and bursts their bubble, and especially for our children who aren't as comfortable yet talking to adults. Like, I had a lot of my children who maybe, were, children who had English as an additional language, and so they weren't confident with speaking with adults, but they were more than happy to speak with children because it felt less pressure. So I would get a lot of my communication and language observations through that play with their peers. But as soon as an adult even comes anywhere near them, zip, gone. And I'm like, "Ugh."
Exactly.
Yeah,
Like complete silent mode again. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Such a good example.
I think as well, the fine balance, and this is really, really difficult, is all the transitions and routines and structure that happen in a day, and that can actually be really hard to get. To get that balance, so that children do have those long periods of flow state of
Mm,
play, and not have it broken up too much. And that's it's a huge challenge in settings and schools, to have a flexible day to allow for those moments,
mm.
without stopping and starting and stopping and starting so many times.
I agree. And especially in school settings where there's perhaps more pressure to follow a more national curriculum style timetable, where it's like, oh, you've got to do X amount of maths, you've got to do X amount of this, X amount of that, and it's like then they've only got half an hour for child initiated time, and it's like that's not enough. Like, it takes perhaps children that long, even longer. And I used to witness this a lot in my reception class, especially because we were getting them ready for year one. It was that time of year where we'd have like half an hour of child initiated time, and just as they were getting the confidence of getting into something, oh no, bell rings, got to do something else, and I was just like, ugh. So I think it's definitely a big question and a challenge for our SLT in schools to really look at the early years timetable, I would say, and really think about, well, actually, the free flow, child initiated, whatever you call it, time is not playtime. It's not like in national curriculum classrooms where they do get a break time and then a lunchtime and then an afternoon break. That is not what it is in early years. It's actually key learning time. And like you guys said, because they really need to get into flow state and it takes time, you need to allow time for that to happen. It's a little challenge to little SLT there.
Yeah, but that's why it's so important that they understand why it's so valuable, what it really is. Because like you said, it's not just the same as when you go up higher up in the school. It provides so much value.
What happens after flow state then? I feel like that's like the pinnacle, that's the peak of the cycle, or is it not?
Well, that's a really important part. And then number 5 is the play frame. So that's kind of initiated by a child, and it's where the play takes place. So there's kind of a physical or imaginary boundary. So it kind of helps keep the play protected. Just kind of imagine, when there's sometimes a child that likes to take the lead,
Mhm,
and they're like, and you do this, and you do this, and you do this, and no one does this, and
mhm.
they're setting the play frame, and then someone
Ah,
suggests something else, and sometimes there'll be some negotiation to be like, "Oh no, we're not going outside and we're doing this, or we're only doing it inside."
yeah.
You can kind of almost imagine they're trying to set the boundaries of the play, or they're trying to set the rules or the understanding between them of what
Interesting.
that play involves.
Yeah, it's almost like the story, isn't it? Like the narrative as well. I was just thinking about role play. Like, you have that flow state where they're all getting into it and doing all their characters and all of this, and then suddenly someone makes a decision, and then that's where the direction of play goes.
I think almost the play frame goes alongside the flow,
Mm,
because the
Yeah.
flow is happening in the play frame. So I don't think really at this point they're separate stages. I think they go
mm.
Yeah.
alongside each other. But the play frame can obviously change, I guess, as the play develops in the
Mhm.
state of flow. So
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very intertwined. I think it's tricky because the way when you say stages, you assume that one stops and the next one begins, and I think that's something about theoretical models that you think, "Oh, okay,
Mm.
it doesn't necessarily always line up that way." And I agree that when you're in a state of flow, it doesn't mean that the play frame can't be there too,
Mm.
but those 2 stages will.
And alongside that, there's no reason why you can't go back to the play cue
Yes,
again. So, and
exactly.
then
Yeah,
the play slightly changes. The
yeah,
children might still all be
Mm.
the same, engaged
yeah.
in it, but actually the play goes back. It sort of goes between them.
And especially if you think about when children are playing, there's just so much going on. So there'll be cues from other children that want to join or haven't been involved. So it's like if you were to try and map just half an hour in a nursery in a school or something, how quickly that would get
Yeah.
very complicated to try and understand where everyone was. But it's just small concepts to try and help you understand play a little bit better.
And help identify, like you say, what skills they're bringing into the play, because theoretically you could start a play frame before the play flow, because there are some
Mm.
children that like that structure, like, oh, do
Mm.
you want to play this? Yeah,
Yes,
go on then, let's play
exactly.
this. Okay, well, the rules
Okay,
are
mummies and
this.
daddies.
Yeah, I'm the
Classic.
mummy, you're
Yes.
the daddy, you're the
Yeah,
baby, you're the
exactly.
dog, and then the play flow kind of
Yeah,
starts. So
exactly.
yeah, that's, and then at any point as well, like you say, if someone introduces a new cue or changes the frame, then someone else can then return that play and go, "Oh, I'll
Yeah.
join in, I'll do that." And then yeah,
Mhm.
so it's pretty cool.
It's really interesting, and obviously those play frames can change so much, and like you said, children will join and then they'll adapt the frame and be like, "Oh, what if we do this?" And that's where it will just keep going, but it's fascinating to think about it in that
Mm.
sort of way. And then the most dramatic stage, the play annihilation.
Annihilation.
And it's just what we were discussing really, is when children choose to end the flow of the play, and it can end in many different ways. You know, the game can end, or one child can decide that it ends for them. They're finished with the game because, like we said, children will join and children will leave depending on how they're enjoying or playing with the game. And children, just when they're like, "I'm done with this," and they walk off and they want to do something else.
I don't wanna play
Annihilation.
anymore. You're like, "Alright, bye."
Yeah, it might be very, very obvious. So they might announce it, like you said, or they might just knock something down like Lilo? Or was it
Stitch, come
Stitch did it?
on, Julia.
Sorry,
Do your
need to
CPD
watch
homework.
it. Like Stitch did, he would be like, "Okay, I've knocked this all down now, we're finished," you know? So it
Mm.
might be the case of that, it's very obvious. And you have to respect that stage of the process. So I think we always have to think about what we're doing, and you might not be ready for their play to end because you might be curious about what was gonna happen next, but they're finished with it, and we still have to respect that too.
This is the thing that I think I find tricky, because you, like you say, especially if you're having a play where it does involve other players, right? I think one of the most challenging things I've had to teach children is, yes, it might have finished for you, but
Mm,
it's not finished for the
Mm.
other children. So what you're going to do is going to
exactly.
impact the other children. So it's kind of like, how can you tell a child is going through play annihilation and just doesn't know how to do it properly, or they're
Mm,
getting frustrated and they want to ruin it for everyone? Like,
mm,
how do you get that distinction between, they might have just done and thrown it all away because they were done, and that's just what they do when they're finished, they just knock it all down. But then you see the other
yeah.
kids and they're like, "Oh my, why have you done that? Why have you?" So I think that's one of the hardest points of this stage. I don't know about you guys.
I think it's really hard, and I think that again often comes back to knowing your children
Mm.
and seeing if that's something that you've noticed before. Do they always want to kind of stop it for everyone, or is that just how they end their play and they wanted to knock it over and walk away? Or are they actively going over to everyone's towers, for example, and knocking them over and being
Yeah,
like, "No, you're done. No, you're done." And it's not about them anymore, it's about everyone being done. So I mean, again, it's very case by
it is
case,
very
child
grey
by
area,
child.
isn't it? There are going to be some children as well that think, and completely non-malicious, it's just, oh well, I finished my play, so that means everyone else is finished.
Well,
Like, they just
exactly.
genuinely
Yeah,
believe that. And I think it's a real
yeah.
real challenge for educators, and I suppose what moves on to our next bit about the role of the educator in teaching children.
Mm,
There are different ways to end play, and also it's a very
yeah.
good teaching point about, because a part of the PSED area of learning is being aware of others' feelings. They might not be ready for
Exactly.
that yet, but we can use it as a teaching point, even when play is finishing.
Yeah, and I think it's those questions of, oh wow, that was loud when you knocked down the tower. Are you finished playing? Do you think like, you know, having those conversations of, because I think sometimes children are just like, yes, I'm done, or they're like, no, we're all done, and then you're like, okay, so that's the difference. You think that we all have to stop, and then it opens the door for more conversation. But yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? There's always these so many different elements to play.
I mean, if you think about it, it's a lot for a child to process.
Oh yeah, so much. And if you, we always remember that this might be the only time and also one of the first times they're playing with so many different
Yeah.
children and so with so many different resources. Like it's a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot to process, like you said.
Exactly. So with all of that in mind, my little through here is, what is our role as the educator then in all of these parts of these cycles? Like, what can we as educators or parents and carers do to support these different stages? Because it's clearly a lot.
I mean, I think before we start sort of talking about the play cycle discreetly, I think one of the first things, and we covered this in Powerful Play, is by creating a really accessible environment for children to facilitate play and to facilitate the play cycle, so that children can go into a state of flow and they have enough time and space and a sense of freedom to experience the play cycle as a whole, because, and we've touched on that a little bit with talking about routines in the day and all the transitions and the breaks in their day. So a huge part in the role of an educator is to give them that time and that space to enable them to access all the different elements of play, really. Being involved in the play cycle, there are probably, well, no, there are four main ways, not probably, there are four main ways that an adult can become involved in the play cycle. And there's four different sort of levels, I suppose, of how much involvement. So the first one is play maintenance. So that's where the adult is observing the play to ensure that the play cycle continues. So in that stage, or that level of interaction and involvement, they only really interact if there is an element of risk. So they stay as an observer so that the children can go into a state of flow, and then obviously eventually go through all the stages. So it's an observer role. And I think that's really important. And we've talked about that throughout, that it's really hard to sometimes stand back, but it is really valuable to enable the cycle to take place and to go with children's interests and needs in that moment. Then the second sort of level of involvement is called simple involvement. So although the adult at this stage is still quite a passive participant and they don't involve themselves in the play, they act sort of more of as a resource to the play. So for example, they might provide objects to keep the play going, or they might offer things so that children are supported at a simple level to enable their play to continue to develop and to continue to carry on. Then there's the medial involvement, and this is when the adult becomes more active in the play and the cycle, and they follow the cues of the child. And that's important, that they follow the cues of the child and they don't take over, which, you know, that we were talking about that earlier, weren't we, about people that come in and into the play and sort of start saying, oh, why don't we do this, or have you tried this? So it's where the adult is taking the lead from the child. And the last level of intervention or interaction is called complex intervention. Now, at this point, the adult becomes fully involved and engaged in the play cycle. They respond to the children and they can suggest ideas for play. So at this point, it's sort of back and forth exchanges between adult and child as a two-way sort of experience. So the child responds to the adult and the adult responds to the child. So those are the sort of the four main ways that an educator can involve themselves in the play cycle. I suppose it's important to recognise, though, that at every stage, there is potential for an adult to disrupt the play cycle, and that those three sort of main ways that would need to take place is if there's a safety issue.
Yeah.
They might offer too many play cues, so that disrupts the play cycle. And then the third one is if an adult suggests ideas that are not being enjoyed by the child, and so the child just stops and walks away from it because that's not how they wanted to play. Yeah, that's three main sort of ways that the play cycle would be disrupted by an adult.
That kind of leaves educators in a bit of a predicament, because how do you balance, right, being a role model and, you know, this is the play cycle, and at the different stages, you know, all children will need some sort of role model of each of the stages. Like, this is how you ask someone to play with you, this is how you could respond, this is how you keep play going, all of that. Like, they have to learn that from somewhere, so we have to role model it at some point. But then where's the line of, yes, you're role modeling this skill, to no, you've interrupted? Like, how do you get that right?
I think it's one of the hardest things. And, you know, I've been teaching for, 25 plus years, and sometimes you do disrupt it by accident and you don't mean to. And it's a very, very fine line of balancing different things in your environment. So it's sort of dependent on what's going on in that moment with that child, and knowing your children and knowing when is a good moment to role model, like you say, role model that whatever skill it is that you might need to do. Is it vital that it's done then and there, or could it be modeled at a different time, so that then the next time they enter that play cycle, they are probably going to be trying out some of the things that you've modeled separately at a different time. So it's very hard. And I think I can think of definite times when I've just stepped in just to then step back out again, and you see a child walking away and you're like, oh no, that was the wrong call, So yeah, it's very difficult. I don't think there's one solution really.
There's no one answer to that. And like Lou says, we all have that experience of doing it wrong. You just don't. Sometimes you don't know until you've done it, and you go, okay, that was not the right time. Next time, I'll know that.
Yeah.
We have to. We learn as much as the kids.
Yeah, and that's okay, isn't it? Like, we're not going to get it right every
Exactly.
time, and that also doesn't mean that we can't interrupt play at all. Like, I think there definitely is an element of, this is what I used to tell myself in my head, because I must have some sort of vague idea of this play cycle, because all of these stages are making sense to me, and I'm like, oh, I did do that, okay, great, phew, I'm not a bad educator, I know what this is. But I would look at, and well, I would just get to know my children as much as I could, and that's why key worker systems work so well, is that I would get to know the child, know what stage they're at in the play cycle, but then also sort of know how long they've been in it, and maybe if they're getting stagnant, if that makes sense. Like, so I would maybe know if a child is really confident in the play flow stage, but they've been in it for quite a while and I can't really see them getting anywhere else. So maybe I'll try and introduce a bit of play frame and see what happens, and show them that might be the next step, and then see where they go with it. And like you say, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think ultimately you do get an observation out of it, of actually this child is maybe firmly in this stage and isn't ready to introduce anything else different into their play, and that's why it didn't work and the play stopped, or something else. And like you say, it's not to say that they start at stage 1 and move up 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not that, but it does give a little bit of an idea of what you can do to role play, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But the other thing, as you were talking, I was thinking we should be okay with knowing that it's okay for the play to just come to an end for a child. But actually, we don't have to intervene to keep the play going. Some play only lasts for 5 minutes, but what they've got out of that 5 minutes was so valuable. So we don't necessarily have to feel that we need to intervene to make it longer, that actually play can be long, it can be short. Play, whatever form, is really valuable in whatever part of it. Maybe they don't get to the play frame stage, but actually they've had a really wonderful experience of having a child accept their play cue.
Exactly.
They've started, and then actually it just naturally just
Yeah.
ends.
Yeah.
But that
I
was
love
really
that.
a really exciting and a moment of pure joy that another child took their
Yeah.
cue to play. So
Yeah, that's a really good
yeah,
point.
Yeah, and that was the success. It doesn't need to be, oh, they were in a flow state for 10 minutes or anything. It was that moment that was the most important. And that's why it's so personalized, and it is, you know your children best, and you know what they need and their kind of next steps and what stage they're in. So
Mm.
again, it's very, very hard to say, isn't it? Exactly what should have happened in every situation.
Typical
and I
early
think
years, there is no right answer.
Yeah.
it just goes back
We
to
trust you.
it just goes back to, it's so important to observe and
Mm,
watch
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
get to know your children, because then you understand them in a much deeper way.
mm. And yourself. Like, we're getting deep here, guys. Like, this was going to be my end
Definitely.
questions, right? I thought we'd end on something a little bit fun, right? You know the 4 roles of the adult in the play cycle?
Yeah.
What's your favourite role and why? What's your
Oh,
favourite?
That's
I actually
really hard.
I actually love number 1 because I actually just love observing. Like, I really love being part of play.
Mm.
That is so fun because play is just the best. A big fan, but I find it so fascinating just taking that full step back,
Mm,
because I think we have very adult ideas of where things might go next or what we would do, but it's not about that. It's where they take it, and they take it into such wild directions. It's just, I find it fascinating.
mm,
I miss that.
mm.
I find this question really, really hard, because I think in so many ways I love every part of it. Um,
Yeah.
I love the standing back and observing children play, in whatever form it is. But I would say that probably the next favourite would be probably when a child, through whatever form, wants you part of it in a way,
Mm.
and you get to
Invites you in.
enjoy that moment with them, whether it's, through medial or complex. You sort of take on that next stage of the joy of being part of their play, rather than just standing back. So yeah, I don't know, I like every stage.
It's hard. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was a hard
It
question.
is really hard. I'm thinking about it now. And weirdly, I'm getting a little bit emotional about it because I think this is
I know. It's
what,
like,
yeah, I'm a little bit like teary, like, oh, I want to go back in the classroom because I think this is, yeah, this is the epitome, I think, of what early years educating is and why we love it because of this. My favorite, just tipping it, I think, is the medial participator bit.
okay. Yeah.
Because, okay, look, I confess, I might come over as this overly confident person who likes to give gab, talk tab, and all of this. And as a teacher, you have to be a manager role and you have to be that role model and, that stuff. It's knackering, right?
Yeah, exhausting.
I get decision fatigue so much and it's a lot of
Yeah.
pressure. So when a child invites me into their play, oh my God, please take charge. I'm so excited. What do
Yeah,
you
tell
want
me
to
what to do.
tell me what to do?
So true.
It's so fun because, like you said, I think children they think of things I would never think of, and then that's when I really learn about myself as well as the kids. Like, and I'll do the silly thing. So if they tell me to do something really silly, I'll do it, and they will. And it's also kind of a really cool teaching tool for me because if I did if I did what they said literally, they'd be like, "No, that's not what we meant," and I'm
Yeah.
like, "Well, then you should have articulated, young lady." But
Yes, use your
it's
words.
so fun. Like they'll, and I'll do all the silly things like, oh, can you be a spoon? And I'll be a spoon. I don't know. That was a terrible example, but just
I'm imagining it now.
that was just really fun for me, where I just let the kids take the rein, and it was like, yeah, you need teach me. Like, what is it you want me to do? What are we playing? You make these rules, and either if they work, then the game goes. But if you get it wrong, I'm going to be silly, and you're going to see that it doesn't work. And it was just
Yeah.
a really fun way for them to play with that concept of, yeah, you're in charge, but like
You need to know what you want and express
Yeah.
yourself.
I think what you've said, it sums it up. In that it's a real privilege to be invited into their play because, well, for a start, it's amazing at developing your relationship with children because they see you as part of their world, don't they? And I think that is just wonderful that they think that to involve you in that way. It's just, I don't know, it's a
Yeah.
really
They
special
like
moment.
light up, don't
Yeah.
they?
Oh, they do.
You know, they're just so excited that you're going to do exactly what they
Oh,
want as
it's
well. Because
yeah.
I think what's so hard about being a parent and carer is sometimes you just don't have time to be that immersed in play because you know, you have to be doing 10 other things. And we are so lucky sometimes just to have that time and then be like, are you really going to pretend to be a spoon? Oh my gosh, it's the best day ever. That like an adult is doing what I want and it's so silly and they're just so happy. And you really do see them like come alive. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just really beautiful, like you said.
Yeah.
Complete privilege.
And yeah, it only pips it to the post by my second favourite, which is like you guys observing, because I think that's for me, that's when I get really emotional. It's usually towards the end of the academic year where I'm like, my
Oh,
babies,
yeah.
they can do it
They
on their
do
own.
everything.
They don't need me anymore. I'm so proud of them. They're ready for
Well,
the
it's the
next
journey, isn't
stage.
it? It's the
Oh,
journey that you've been on, and you know where they started, and they might not have been able to enter into play with another child. They might have been quite solitary, and now at the end of the year, they're thriving, and
Oh,
you
so
see,
beautiful.
I'm
yeah, it's
getting
really
emotional, guys. You need to stop
Oh, we're
this.
just going to descend into tears at the
Literally,
end of
we're
this.
all going to start
What a
crying.
lovely time we've had.
Oh.
Blubbering.
But it's just the magic of early years, isn't it? And why
It is.
play is so important, because it's not just play, it's so much more than that. And this
Mm,
just proves it.
mm,
So oh, what a joyous episode. Usually
yeah.
I fill you with hard-hitting questions and quizzes at the end and you end up hating me. But not this time. Look
Never,
at us.
never.
This time, just in tears.
Just tears of
Not
love.
Joyful tears.
normally we have a really hard game at the end, Shána.
Yeah.
No, that was your
And
game. Memories of what you like doing.
no,
on
that's
FaceTime.
lovely. That's why we've ended in a
Oh, is that a hint?
not a hard. No. Oh no, because I like the games too, but it's
Okay.
a,
Point
it's
taken.
ended in
There's a time
an
and a place.
ended in an emotional response to play,
It's
which has been
beautiful.
lovely.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, now I just want to go play.
I want to go play.
Come
Shall we go
invite me.
play? Let's go play. Let's do
Play.
it. Aww. Well, thanks, guys. What a lovely day we've had. I look forward to hearing about our followers and our listeners. And I'm sure when they've been listening to this, they've been thinking about children that they, come up in their heads when we've been talking about different cycles and stuff. So, isn't it lovely? Lovely. Oh, well, I'll leave you to it then. Until next time. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
See you next time. Thanks for
See you-
having us.
Yeah. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
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 So there you go. Hopefully you have learned something about what the play cycle means in our earliest settings. Sounds like stuff we've already been doing, right? So I hope that's given you some encouragement and also made you a little bit emotional like we got at the end there. It is so lovely to work in early years and be a part of that learning and play journey that they go through that I think makes early years unique and special compared to maybe other sectors in education. If you have anything that you wanted to add to about this topic, or anything else, do get in touch on our social media sites and do make sure to check the episode descriptions to find all the links where you can learn more. But until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye. So that's it for today's episode. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you would like to join in or would like to know more, then come and find us on our social media sites. We have a Facebook page, Facebook groups, an Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Pinterest, and YouTube. All the links of where to find us will be in our podcast description. Come and join the conversation. And whatever you're doing today, I hope you have a great day.